Back here off of Ayers Point now. We're fishing this whole back shoreline, south shoreline of the San Antonio Bay area here on the Matagorda Island side. Uh, Spend a lot of time back in these back lakes, man. We've got so much extra water in our system right now, so these back lakes really light up. A lot of fish not holding on the outer edges. We found a few, but not a tremendous amount. And that's when we started getting back in these back lakes back in here. I like to get in. This is one of my favorite back lakes to get into because it really opens up into lots of different areas. Big surface area of water that you can get back in all these little areas back here and work that. So that was our game plan. Once we started seeing our tide reports that were really lots of water that was in here, and uh, Saturday and Sunday was the same type of thing. Monday, bunch of water in our system. Now, at some point, of course, this is around we're in this big moon, so that moon's pushing and pulling a lot of water in and out of here. So, at some point, this water will drop out, and it'll be pretty drastic when it takes place. But as of right now, it is not happening. It's just that water is stacked in here, and it initially scatters these fish for you. So, once they get an area that they can get back into and work that they haven't really had a chance to get into for a little bit, then they really start to explore. So it takes 3 or 4 days to kind of figure them out and where they're hanging, where they're located, and what they're doing. As long as your water levels stay where they're at, that's what that's kind of what we did. And this is, like I say, this is a pretty big area that's back in here now. It's not all of it's not completely accessible because they got roads that they rebuilt and back in there. The Texas Parks and Wildlife did, but the areas that you can get into, there's tons of fishable area in there, so you can really take your time with it and work. We spent a couple of days up in this thing here, just working up right up against the grass because of the amount of water that's in there, especially this past Sunday. Man, there was just that water was, some of the areas were really flooded, so it kind of changed what it all looked like. So it took a minute to kind of figure yourself out there and where you were going to be and how you were going to approach the fish. But what we figured out pretty quickly is that most of the redfish specifically were pushed all the way up in this grass, maybe 6 to 8 feet back in there, because that's how much water was in the system. Trout were kind of hanging out on the outside, scattered. Nothing great by the account there as far as what we were catching. We're still catching a few box fish that were there, but a lot of them were in that 13 to 15 range. The redfish, you could find them found a couple of small groups tailing back in some of these areas as well. So it made it a lot of fun from that standpoint to sight cast those. So what we were primarily using these past week and a half, we were throwing our down souths in specific colors. Since we're around this big moon, and we'll be transitioning out of that here toward the end of this upcoming week. So we were trying to stay with a little bit smaller profile to begin with, and just kind of messed around with that to see what they would like and what they would continue to eat. Now, specifically around the major and the minors, if you were able to get to that. So that moon was setting pretty early, so you were fishing kind of on the back side of that minor time frame and in between heading up to that major under. So when you do that, our bite kind of tapered off a little bit. So that's why we stayed with the smaller bait. So in the down south, it was, the burner shad and the original size, and I'm pretty much, that water was stained back in there since you had a lot of water that was in there. So we stayed with like Twisted Tea, Big Papa, White Ice was okay. It did pretty good. Watermelon Red. It's pretty much the same the flavors that we've been throwing. Pav lures, a little softy, so it's kind of mimics what a soft dine is. Really good bait back in there. A lot of floating grass, so you have to kind of be careful with that. We threw some top water baits in there as well. Mirror lure, Little Johns, XLs as well. Threw that in just to give us a little bit bigger and fatter profile in there to see if those fish would eat that. And like I say, there wasn't really, other than the profile and size, that was really about the only thing that was consistent. Now, as far as flavor goes, there wasn't anything that just stood out, that knocked it out of the park as far as throw this particular color and that profile and you're going to catch fish. Now, that wasn't anything that worked that way, but it was more the profile. So the original size or the burner shad size or something in that 3 to 4 inch range. The knock and tail was another one that was good. We threw the Rogue in it, the greenback. did pretty well there. So from an ease standpoint, that works pretty well as we were working that back in these areas. But again, with the amount of water that's in here and how expanded these areas are like that, these fish, like I say, it takes you a few days to kind of figure them back out once all that water does influctuate these areas. So it does scatter them, but once you kind of locate them, that's where they're pretty much going to be, pretty much grouped up like that. So again, another decent weather pattern that's coming up this upcoming week. But again, make sure you're paying attention to what those tide reports are each morning, any day that you get to fish, if you do, because like I say, we do have a lot of water in the system right now, and at some point it's going to drop back out. Back here around the ranch house shoreline, all this area back here as we kind of head back toward Allen's Bight, that area. Once again, with the amount of extra water that we got in here, so it really opens up lots of areas, so you can kind of fish these little back areas that come back into that. Get all the way back into here, and you got a lot of back lakes that are back into this area here. And then you can slide back around here and work all these areas back in here. A lot of these open up really good. Like I say, it's some people like the less water to help concentrate those fish, which understandably so, I get it. But when you get all this influx of water that we got right now, it makes lots of areas accessible that you can get to find fish. So whereas if you've got the lower water levels, there may be 5 or 6 boats fishing in an area that everybody's trying to get to because they know those fish are somewhat concentrated in whatever said area that is. But when the lots of water that's in there and it goes everywhere, those fish got a lot of room to roam, then you can get away from people and you don't have as much pressure on a particular area. So that's my biggest thing about extra water in the system is we'll locate fish, and it just as long as we don't have to worry about 6, 7, 8, 9 boats, it's going to be in a 200-yard area from you. So when it does that, you can really spread out and you can locate these fish in there. So we just worked all these back lakes, and they're all interconnected back there, so you can really run them with all that extra water, and you don't necessarily have to have a skinny running boat. So I mean, some of these areas that normally have a foot of water or less, it's right at 2 feet of water, maybe even more, depending on the given day and how much water or how much tide's pushing in and out. But yeah, these, like I said, you can work all these things, around fence, sand. Like I said, we jumped in here behind Allen's and ran this thing all the way around back into the Mott. Worked all these areas back here because you got lots of little spoil areas that are back there that's got little drop-offs and edges to them. If you're not super familiar with it, I would proceed with caution in there because there are a few hazards, i.e. sandbars, few scattered shell, that type of stuff. But yeah, with a bunch of extra water in here, you can really kind of explore. It opens you up to some areas back in that. And then, of course, with the amount of, over time, with the amount of airboats that's been running in and back out, they've created a little pass that you can run your boat through that. So it's kind of helpful from that standpoint. And then just work these back lakes and all these areas that are all interconnected in here. All the way, Jaybird back in here. You got Sherman's that's back in here. And you keep just kind of working these areas. Come all the way back in here. You can get all the way up to Vincent Slough if you want. We did not, but it is accessible with that amount of water. So, like I say, found scattered trout that were in here. Nothing great, not yet. Still waiting on a decent little cool front to come push down there, and that'll change things for us dramatically. Like I say, we found lots of redfish. We're starting to see a bunch of those redfish that are schooled up in various pod sizes, anywhere from maybe 6 or 8 up to maybe 50 to 100, depending on where you're at and what you locate. And they're all different, various sizes. They're anywhere from 16 to 18 in one group. You may find some mid sliders that are 22 to 25. You may find another group that's upper slot, 26 to 28. But if you're fortunate to find those, and it's a lot of fun when you can find those. So once again, same baits that we mentioned in the first video. The down south Pav lures, the knock and tail lures sprinkled in with some of the mirror lures, and then of course if you're a topwater junkie fan, when you got these access like these in these areas like that, you can really have some fun with those. So we sprinkled some of that in there as well and had a little bit of fun with that and getting blow ups and catches and that kind of thing. So this is what we're working on. Like I say, really focused on that minor setting and then kind of worked all the way up and tried to get into that secondary bite of the major under. But pretty for the most part, a pretty productive week as far as catching consistency goes. And again, that was our game plan. That's what we like to do, especially when we got this amount of water. Back here in St. Charles Bay system, we're trying to take advantage of some of these back shorelines here as you head up toward Egg Point. Boy Scout camp area, another great shoreline with all the extra water in our system. Cavasso Creek's another particular great area. You've got a couple little back lake mouths that's in there. We went all the way to the back. You got 3 or 4 little back lake mouths that dump out into that. We were just fishing the mouths of those, see if we could locate some redfish, which we pulled out a few here and there. It wasn't like there was a big school or anything that was back in that area on the day that we fished back in here, but we just kind of scattered ourselves, working these areas. I guess on the south side of Egg Point, that shoreline, if you get down about another 600 or 700 yards down on that shoreline, just right down there across from where the boat ramp is there, and fish it back toward the point of Egg, it's just a fantastic shoreline. It's got a tremendous amount of grass on it. It's got great potholes that are on it. It's got great structure that's in that area. And, we had some east, northeast, northwest, north winds this past week as well. So we were kind of fishing it from the point down or back toward the south. And then you get on the other side, the north side of Egg Point with that right wind. If you got a north wind that's coming into it, or maybe even a northwest, you can fish right down the parallel to it. So it really sets up good. And it's the same type of structure that's on that. Then we get up there on Boy Scout camp and just kind of work different areas in that. Found scattered trout here and there. Found some redfish scattered out here and there. Again, just not great numbers. Like I say, we're dealing with the big moon, so that bite's really kind of funky right now. But if you did find them in the right time frame around one of those majors or minors, then you could catch them pretty decently. But again, the bite was not just super active or very aggressive whatsoever. It's pretty light bites that we had. Then you get up there on Big and Little Sharp and fish that flat there, and that sets up really good for northeast wind. You can kind of fish down it all the way back here and here to Cow Chip. So this is St. Charles is another one of those areas I like to get into when all the water that we have right now influxes our system. So because it really kind of opens up and helps fish move around easily. And then factored in with, if you got your bait present in the area and you got the over the right structure, then you can deal with all that and find you some fish located on it. And then, of course, here off Ernest Point, come back around to that area there. And so this is a big old shallow sand flat that's right there, really hard packed sand. But it was fishing a little bit deeper with the amount of water here. So it is real easy wading, hard bottom. Then, of course, you've got where all the shell stacks are that are back down in there. Of course, that was a little bit more difficult to fish because of the depth of the water. So we just kind of maybe stayed on the edge of that and kind of fished toward those reefs and just kind of bounced baits off of that. I'll tell you another bait that we incorporated into this past week was the knock and tail jerk shrimp. So it's real similar to what the Marker 54 jerk shrimp is, but it's a newer version that they've come out with. And it was a small version. That's why we tried it and threw it in there, because it's only about maybe 2.5 inches. But it's got that segmented tail on it. It comes in the same flavors as regular baits do. And it's got rattles that are into it as well. So being that smaller profile bait, we had some pretty good productivity with that as well. Just bouncing that thing off the shell, bounce it off the bottom. We get in some of these areas. It's got the potholes with the grass. Just throw it, just basically just cherry picking those potholes. Just get into a distance where you can cast straight into it and just work the bait through that pothole. So another bait that's been pretty good for us as well. So always pay attention to that. And especially around the big moon, like I say, we're still probably another 5 or 6 days before we transition out of that full moon, starting to head into those wild card days. And that won't be till the end of next week. So just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on what your tide reports are, weather systems as well, because again, we're into October, and we're going to probably start to see a few little light fronts, maybe see a decent one here in the next 15 to 20 days. We don't know yet, but all those weather patterns are going to be things you're going to have to contend with moving forward as we get into the winter time.